Night shifters, ever witnessed a paranormal activity? If so, what was it? I was working at a gas station at like 3 AM one night. A car pulled into the pump. Guy got out and started pumping. And then the car and dude just vanished. I was looking right at it. And it just popped out of existence. I told my boss the next day and she turned white as a sheet. She'd seen the same thing. Same exact description. Same car. Same pump. Same guy. What a shitty way to spend the afterlife. I worked at a movie store in college. I was closing one night and just kind of doing a final walkthrough. I kept hearing what sounded like movie cases shuffling. I looked around thinking maybe someone had came in last minute, although I didn't hear the bell ring for when someone enters the store. Didn't see anyone. Then I hear what sounds like a movie fall off a shelf in the kids section. I go over and there's a movie laying on the ground and I shit you not, it was Casper. At least the ghost or crackhead crashing in the store has a sense of humor. I worked at a 7/11. One night I kept hearing what sounded like a little girl crying. But the store was completely empty. Whenever I'd go to the area where I thought it was coming from, I'd hear it from somewhere else. I hope somebody was messing with me, but I'm not sure. Never go out alone when you hear a crying child. It's an increasingly common ploy that bad people will use to lure women, and men too, come out into the dark so that they can do stuff. Usually they use a recording. But there have been instances of people using actual children. I think. This is just what I've heard. I work the front gate at a military installation. The night shift is super dull and quiet where I am at. For a while I noticed this dark green old Ford Bronco that would roll up. When I would stand out the gate shack, the car would do a 180 and leave. This happened about 2-3 times until I finally caught the license plate before it turned. I ran the numbers to my supervisor. He asked me if I was sure. I said I'm 100% certain. He tells me it couldn't be because the numbers led to a vehicle crash report that involved the exact same vehicle and plate number to which the driver had died in the vehicle, and the vehicle was totaled. That shit made me want to switch to days. A lab building where I once worked was the site of a murder-suicide, which happened while I was there. Awful and sad. We didn't have shifts per se, but I had to work late one night autoclaving equipment for the next day's experiment. The autoclave room is right next to the lab where the event took place. I hadn't seen anyone else in the building. After I started the load, I was about to leave the room when I heard a crash outside. I immediately opened the door and saw that all the contents of a table in the hallway had been pushed to the floor. Water bottles, a packet of papers, pens, etc. Since I was right by the door at the time, I would have seen and or heard someone running away. It was against protocol to leave things in the autoclave overnight, so I had to stay an hour and a half to get them out. But nothing else happened. I left the stuff on the floor, though. Didn't want a repeat of that. Used to work at IHOP. A cook before my time got shot and died during robbery. I would always hear someone in the kitchen, such as the spatulas clanking, but nobody would be in the kitchen. Once I saw a black figure in the back, figured it was the cook. When I went outside to the front of the restaurant, the cook was sitting outside smoking. There was no current orders either. Other co-workers experienced some stories. One of them said she felt pushed, but I can't speak on what I didn't see. I don't have a story, but here is the one my wife likes to tell. She is a nurse and for a couple of years she was working night shift in the palliative care unit, which is the comfort care end of life unit. Patients in that unit are expected to die, or to be sent home or to a care home to die. Anyways, those rooms also had a radio. And according to her, it happened a few times that a radio suddenly turned on, and within an hour or so a patient would pass on. One rather busy night, the radio turned on and my wife went into the room, stared into the darkness and said, "Cut that out. I don't have time for this shit." And the radio suddenly snapped off. No patient died during the rest of her shift, but one passed away shortly after she clocked out. Pretty minor things. I was a custodian in ICU, 2 nurses and me on shift, and it pretty empty most of the time. I have 2 stories. 1. During my shift as I was cleaning the empty rooms. Every minute or so out of the corner of my eye the shadows move. Pretty WTF moment the first 2 times. 2. We had a brain dead patient ready for organ harvest. It was me and a nurse in the room when she froze. I ask if there is something wrong and she says I know that's impossible but he just moved pretty scary. PS. He didn't. I work on a boys unit at a mental hospital. Recently my patients have been complaining about seeing ghosts in their rooms at night. Claiming they've seen things, coloring pages and art they've taped up, fly off the walls. Doors open and close by themselves. And a few patients have claimed to see full body apparitions. Given their age and psych status, I'd usually take their stories with a grain of salt. But actually I sort of believe them. The hospital opened as an asylum in the mid-1800s. And patients have definitely died there. Much of the original building is still used, including my unit. And honestly, when I walk around the halls at night, hours after the patients have fallen asleep, it legitimately does feel like someone is always watching me. I think it's just a matter of time until I have my own ghostly encounter. When a patient buzzed and asked me to ask the person behind the curtain to go away. For your information, it was dark and everyone was in their beds. That's when you say no you and then hang up. I used to work the early shift making bagels, 3 AM, and would sometimes see things in the reflection of my oven that were running around behind me. They looked like chickens. I told a co-worker about it and he took me in the back where we stored the flour and pointed at the ceiling. It was completely crusted with some dark brown fuzzy looking substance. He told me the building we were in was once a chicken processing plant. Thousands of chickens had died right there. The stuff on the ceiling was blood and feathers. My father was transferred to a remote location. A less developed state with a lot of tribal population. Everyone we knew said that when they first came to that city. They had nightmares for weeks. My family. My dad's colleagues. Friends. Everyone. I didn't go. I was the only one who didn't. Maybe people who are more superstitious experienced it. IDK. Damn. All these people having awesome stories and I just be cleaning hospital all night. Shoot, I used to work graveyard shift at a warehouse as security guard. Now it's the same job but different shift. First shift believes there's a ghost named Lucas. I've worked there a little over 2 years so far and I still have to find anything unexplained. Feel ya there. A new job at a kitchen in the next county over. Kind of a long drive. I heard the crew discussing routes and one night I decided to take what I thought was the road they were all taking. Big mistake. I ended up getting chased around by some mountain man in the middle of nowhere on a pitch black curvy ass road to the hills. It was just another new guy following me because he thought I knew the shortcut. Dunno if this counts as paranormal. But when I was in pediatrics as an intern, we'd get a surge of patients exactly at midnight. Every damn time. Like bloody clockwork. Something else. Not really paranormal. Just science. Heart patients usually decompensate around 2 to 3 AM. Why would the second thing happen? Can you explain the science to us? That's pretty interesting sounding. My aunt who was cooking in friend's home at 8 PM passed out immediately after she saw 2 shadows on the ground talking to each other and she said she couldn't understand anything. Those were her friend's imaginary kids. I work at a Walmart. When I started working apparel on the night shift, the others in that department started trying to spook me with tales about it being haunted and yada yada yada. I didn't really care. I grew up in a haunted house so ghost stories didn't bother me. And then we actually experienced something. I was like, huh, neat. But one of the ones who'd been trying to spook me freaked right the FCK out. It was hilarious. She and I had been standing about 5 or 6 feet apart, talking to each other. The store had closed at midnight and we were the only ones in apparel. Right between us. Both of us heard a female voice as clear as day. I only heard a voice, but no words. My co-worker said she heard words, but she was so freaked out she never told me what she heard exactly. I was working at an assisted living facility on the dementia unit. The place was originally a mansion that had burnt down. When it burnt down, 2 children and their mother had perished. Now back to when I was working there, when the elderly were towards the end. The veil between our world and the spirit world is thinned. My one resident came out of her room hysterical. She said there were 2 young children that were looking for their mother. Me fully believed her and told her I would try to help them, to try and console her. I got her tucked in and calmed and trying to hide my uneasiness. I go sit in the office and then another resident says this lady keeps calling for her children and DCK was annoyed. So me, extremely creeped, goes to the office and calls my co-worker and her, and I spent the rest of the night with her. While working at a psych ward, every morning at about 2 AM there would be the sound of someone running down the main service hallway, followed by the same door at the end slamming. One time I kept a close eye on the area, but when I was distracted for a few seconds the footsteps began, but when I got to the area there was nothing. According to one of the managers, it had happened for several years, always at the same time every morning, and most believed it was a ghost of one of the deceased clients. Another time, all the battery-powered wall clocks in the unit spun around a few times simultaneously. That WAA freaky, and everyone in the area screamed. I work the night shift in a hotel. It's a pretty old building, so lots of weird stuff happening. What stands out in particular is that there is a very creepy statue, which one night was gone. I asked the morning receptionist why they had removed it. She seemed confused. We checked and it was there again. I swear it was gone during the night. Next shift I could make a picture of the statue if anyone is interested. It's a very creepy statue. The light bulb over the wash basin will turn on by itself. But actually the reason is the spring in the switch is old and not working properly. Was visiting a supposed murder site in some woods in Colorado with a friend of mine. We were there for all of 5 minutes before my friend stopped me short and said aloud, "There are 4 shadow people moving towards us," and points in 4 different directions. I looked to the right of us, the only side that had any sort of light, and I watched a shadow jump across the light into a bush. It then pulled itself out of the bush and began to jerkily stagger towards us. Straight up looked like something from a Tool music video. Stooped, jerking erratically. Solid black with 0 discernible features aside from a kind of lumpy human-esque shape. Edit. I totally missed the night shift part XD. One night the call lights at the end of the hall and rooms with no patients would just randomly turn on. When we went down to look, lights in the room were on too, as well as the closet. It did that on and off all that night. I was on CQ, charge of quarters, while stationed in Germany. At about 2 AM, a Dachshund came in the building, summer, so doors were open. I followed him down the hall to get him out and he just vanished when I was about 6 feet away. It was unbelievably real. 10/10 would hallucinate again. Patient asked me to hide her cinnamon roll cause the kids would steal things and keep her up all night. Month later these kids are running around and I go to find them and they disappear. I left that job and came back years later and my dementia patient would be up all night talking to these damn kids. So I'd have to put them to bed when I came off shift so she could sleep. So I will share an incident shared by my aunt. She's a matron and one night while she went inside the mortuary she met with lots of punches, but the source of the punches was invisible. We all could see the bruises on her face. No, but I've witnessed people jerking it instead of stocking the shelves. Early morning opening a warehouse I was a manager at. No one else there. Has a motion sensitive alarm that I have to disable when I open. Lock the door behind me. Went to go take a dump. I'm in the stall, and I hear the door open. Hear footsteps go from the door and hear the stall next to me open and close. No feet present. I finished and stayed in the break room until someone else arrived. Grandmother's house at night I would hear footsteps in the attic. And then dishes in the dish rack would be moved back and forth. My mother has heard someone calling her name in one of the rooms when no one is home. Grandma's friend came over and saw my aunt's ex-husband standing in the dining room. He died in the house 2 days prior. I once saw a submission on Fallon hashtags. SB had a job as a caretaker of a cemetery. They would mow grass and the mower would stop working stall every day in front of a particular grave and it scared the hell out of them. My parents are nurses who work night shifts at their hospitals and apparently people can sometimes see dark shadows just sitting in empty chairs in empty rooms and back when they lived in Singapore. Apparently there was this lady dressed in full white who wandered the corridors. I was babysitting once and her and I were in the living room watching Annie. We were munching on popcorn, enjoying the sleepover. Her 2 older brothers were out for the night. So we head to the kitchen to top up the refreshments. And on passing by a kind of games room, the den, we notice one of her brothers stretched out on the sofa, legs crossed watching a movie. I could see his glasses, socks, full outfit. We called to him many times. Nothing. Jokingly threw a soft toy at him and nothing. Both of us went pale and had that tummy drop feeling. He was just a frozen image. No natural breathing movements. Just like a projection. We ran into the living room, turned off Annie and got into each of our blankets to sleep. The 2 brothers returned home hours later and it still freaks me out. I was staying at my hostel room while one night after I felt like someone touching my hair and moving hand throughout my face but thought it was my roommate. But when woke up, my roommate was not there and later next night I saw some strange figure in my room door while entering from outside and it was creepy. Every night. I live in this city. And more than half of it is just abandoned. I wake up before work. And I'll go drive around. And everything looks like a ghost town. Restaurants. Fast food places. Even Walmart. All just abandoned. I come home from work. Everything's still abandoned. I think they are haunted because I'll see the signs will change. But I'll never see the lights on. Spooky. I know the most logical explanation is that some crackheads are so skinny they can just squeeze into some really tight spaces or hiding spots. But when a skeletal, half-naked hobo seems to materialize right out the darkness into the middle of a spot of light from the street lamp, cackle and ramble about impending doom, then f-king vanish into a knee-high bush, I'm inclined to assume the parking lot is haunted by its very own gremlin. Once I worked security for an event at the Queen Mary. I've heard the stories and such but tried not to believe them. My area was empty and my shift wouldn't be over for another 2 hours. It was dark, cold and there was nobody around. Everyone was busy dancing and enjoying the music in the main hall. A man in a suit was walking toward me, smoking a cigar. When he approached me, I told him this area was no smoking. But I didn't smell anything. When he walked past me, it got really cold. He continued down the corridor and I just kind of shrugged. When I looked back, he was gone. Vanished completely. There was still 20-30 feet for him to clear and he definitely didn't sprint the rest of the way. I do IT work for a hospital and was in overnight for a downtime shift. I took the chance to replace some computers in the ORs and holy shit. I have never been in a place that was so still. I didn't see anything. But just with how clean and silent those rooms are, it feels oppressive. It was f-king weird. And I won't be in that place overnight ever again. Few years ago when I was working in a casino. At 4 AM when the casino was closed we found one of the slot chairs laying on the ground. These chairs are quite stable and heavy as all hell to accommodate so many people sitting in them all day. When we looked at the surveillance videos, the chair is up against the slot machine then just leans back and falls over onto the ground. None of the legs broke and we couldn't find any damage. That was the talk of the casino for a while. Every now and then I'd feel a full hand ass grab and I'd whip around ready to beat the hell out of whoever thought it funny. Only to discover there was no one there. Eventually just started asking the apparition, whom I referred to an handyman, to keep it professional or my booty would quit. And I shit you not it stopped. I was working the overnight shift alone in a data center and had been for 3 weeks. The lack of human interaction was starting to take a toll on my mental health. I looked up from my computer because I thought I saw something move on one of the security cameras, and for a split second, I swear I saw a close-up of a grotesque face. I was very concerned because that particular camera is about 25 feet off the ground. I should point out that this was shortly after I started microdosing hallucinogens for depression and anxiety. So it may not have been real. It was real enough to, almost literally, scare the piss out of me. Night shift nurse. Here. I worked in a rural hospital that was pretty old. The nurse's station faced a long hallway that was known for something. Everyone had witnessed it at one point or another. This thing was like a shadow, but you couldn't see through it completely solid. It had a habit of limping down the hallway and disappearing, or poking its head out of doorways and staring after people who had just left the room. Day or night, you had this feeling that you were being watched as you walked down that hall. There were other rooms with issues too. The call light would go off without any patients being in that room. Patients calling out and asking why there was a man coming into their room, staring at them and then leaving. And the elevator doors would open and close on their own. I was working as a security guard, and all of the animatronics at the place tried to kill me. My god, that's horrible. Have you ever considered selling your story to a film production company? Or even a video game developer? I wasn't night shift, but I worked in a presidential library for a little while. Lots of reports of the sound of leather-soled shoes walking the hallways at night when no one else was around. Feeling a presence of a person nearby but no one is there. Things dropping off shelves, displays for no reason. I work at a grocery store, and there is one part of the store I refuse to go in past 11 without somebody. Right as we're closing, when there's nobody in the store, I see a woman behind the bars at the pharmacy, which only the head pharmacist has keys to. It's creepy. That whole area has creepy vibes. Edit. Talking to 2 of my managers, they've also seen the same woman. So maybe I'm not crazy. Not a night shift worker, but one night in a small town that's kinda known for some paranormal stuff, my dad was driving behind another truck on a back road, and we both saw something humanoid but like 5 feet tall, skinny but out of proportion arms and legs compared to a person right behind the truck we were following, and it was in a full-on sprint across the road faster than a person could run. Ran a bar for a few years that had been closed for 10 years prior. Quite a few homeless people died there while it was closed, but when we reopened, weird things would happen all the time. On multiple occasions, pizza pans would go flying across the room. I would check the cameras to see who was doing it, but there was never anyone there. That place freaked me out at night.